Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Australia with Dr. Martin Harvey. Martin, can you get us started by just introducing yourself and also reflecting on that moment when you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor? What was going on in your life? What attracted you to this path? And if you could just share your insights with the students.
Okay, thanks. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be able to talk with you and also kind of share, I guess, my take on why being a chiropractor is such an awesome life path to take. I would say, though, that I guess my entry into it probably wasn't as premeditated as I would hope most people's or as thought out. So as a kid, we went periodically to a chiropractor, and it didn't really register that much to me as something that I wanted to do with my life. It was something that in our family we went for sort of to help your health. We'd go to the chiropractor periodically, and in my mind as a child, I remember sort of thinking it, I guess, a bit like a physical version of vitamin C. It was something that meant that I didn't really get sick much, which was kind of great, but I didn't sort of think of anything beyond that. I didn't have a very full or expansive picture of what chiropractic was about. And a couple of years from finishing high school, the chiropractor that we'd seen growing up had a new associate join him, and he looked like he had a pretty cool life. He was a pretty cool guy. Within a fairly short period of time of graduating, he had a nice car. He got to go surfing a few times a week, which was and still is a pretty high value for me. So I was thinking, oh, that looks like pretty good fun. It doesn't. And so I went into chiropractic, I think, for this idea of what I could get out of it, that it was going to be this nice lifestyle. And it wasn't really until I connected with a lot of the kind of philosophical ideas behind chiropractic and saw the potential that chiropractic has to help people in so many ways, that chiropractic was really a unique approach to helping people live healthier, happier, more active lives, and kind of unleash this power that we have within us to do things at a better level just by having this really comfortable, beautiful procedure of a chiropractic adjustment done. So I got super excited about that. And I guess that was, I was a chiropractic student, 33, that was probably 35 years ago. And I'm still excited and entranced by the idea that chiropractic has and the potential that chiropractic has all these years later. So I guess that's kind of from where I started to where I am. But I guess now I'm still in full-time chiropractic practice here in Melbourne, Australia, in kind of inner city Melbourne. And as well as that, because I love chiropractic and I think it has the potential to help so many people, I've also been very active on a number of other, I guess, boards and things. So I think we both connected when I was president of the Australian Spinal Research Foundation. So I was involved in that for many years. And now I'm on the board of the Scotland College of Chiropractic, which is a startup college that should be launching very, very soon in Edinburgh in the UK. So I guess I've kind of got a unique perspective of chiropractic education around the world, which we can dive into if you like.
Yeah, I'm just curious to start out with, as a practicing chiropractor, why you decided to get so involved in chiropractic education and chiropractic research.
Okay, so I guess for me, chiropractic has this amazing potential that because our body, the nervous system has this central role in running how your body works. And there's this really simple beauty to hands-on in my practice. Every day I'm working with people, helping their body work better so that they can do the things that are important to them at a high level. And everybody can benefit from that. However, there's a lot of people who, first of all, don't understand that that's what chiropractic is about. And secondly, aren't getting access to that. And there are things that need to happen at a bigger level than I can achieve in my practice for that to scale up to the level that I think our community needs. And the research part of it is really science is the currency of influence. If you want something to have an impact, you need to demonstrate its value with science, and you need to improve its performance by using science as a feedback loop. And So I was very engaged in that, and I still am a big supporter of that. And so that was, I guess, my entry into wanting to help chiropractic get more impact by developing more scientific research. And so in my time involved with this Australian Spinal Research Foundation, I'm really proud that we were able to facilitate a lot of really impactful research around the world. And then in terms of the education piece, the chiropractic colleges really are the driver of a lot of culture for chiropractic in different parts of the world. So the students who graduate are really, how good they are and how easy they find in practice is really a reflection of the quality of the education that they get. And particularly in Australia, we've been really fortunate that there's a newer chiropractic college, the Australian College of Chiropractic in Adelaide, that I think is an amazing institution. They've done a really great job of creating quite a unique experience and kind of upgrading the options that are available for chiropractic students here in Australia. And I knew that was in train, and we'd had New Zealand College of Chiropractic, but I do a lot of work in the UK, and to my take on it was that they would really benefit from having an institution along similar lines to Life or Life West, where you guys are, and I know there's others, or Barcelona College in Europe, or here New Zealand College. And when I started on the Scotland College board, the Australian College hadn't started, but I knew it was germinating, and so we wanted to develop something like of that sort of flavour for UK and that northern part of Europe. And so I got involved in that. And partly, and I guess big picture for that is, I just think that it's important for our chiropractic world to have a network of colleges like that to really be able to create an impact.
I'm just curious. I know this is maybe a little early in the conversation to ask this question, but can you give your, I guess, best reflection on the current state of chiropractic education globally, and how each college is sort of independently functioning? And our profession, the major premise is all about connection and recognizing how everything is connected and can be coordinated in perfect and beautiful harmony and function if it has that clear connection. And what's going on with our schools that are like-minded, are aligned in purpose, and what would it mean if they were more collaborative in nature and more facilitating more dialogue around how do we work together to really bring chiropractic to its potential?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. Scotland College is, we've been really fortunate that we've received a lot of help and support from other chiropractic colleges. So there's an element of connection, and you're right that in some senses, because we're at a different stage, most of the existing chiropractic colleges that have a similar vision to us are already operating, and so they probably have different priorities and they have different points of focus at the moment to us. With Scotland College of Chiropractic, there's an element where we're not necessarily involved in all of the activities and all of the points of connection that might happen, but we've had great help from people in all of the chiropractic colleges that we've spoken about. I also get the point that you're talking about, that there is scope, I think, for much greater level of coordination. And if we were able to create a vehicle for that coordination and connection, that's going to serve the students, it's going to serve the institutions, and by extension, that's going to serve the community around us. In terms of the exact vehicle for that, I sort of feel like I'm not in the best place to comment on that, in that I'm not hands-on in the college, and we're coming in from the side, and we're coming into the party late, and everybody's already been at the party for 30, 40, 50 years for some of the institutions. But we'd be keen. I can see the value, and I think we'd be very keen to be part of something that creates a level of coordination of the like-minded colleges and I can see great value in it. But yeah, I don't have a big overarching vision for it.
I appreciate you obliging me and just doing your, yeah, just addressing the question. I know it's out there. Let's shift our focus back to the prospective student, current student, and really center our voice on. Let's just start with the prospective student. How would you simply break down what chiropractic is, how this path is unique and distinct for that high school or college student to learn about this field, which is so underrepresented, so kind of invisibly existing within the context of healthcare career pathways around the world?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the exciting thing about chiropractic is that most people, in terms of getting up every day and doing something, it's going to be a more engaging life if you're doing something that you enjoy doing and adds value to other people. And at that very simple level, chiropractic's a phenomenal way of doing that. And it's not for everybody, but I think it is a great way. If you're the sort of person who you'd like to do something where every day you're working with people who are doing better, their life is getting better because of what you offer them, then as a starting point, I'd encourage them to have a look at chiropractic. Just looking at it through a slightly different lens, there's a really amazing book called Drive that's written by Daniel Pink, and it's essentially an amalgamation of all the literature around what it takes for people to be motivated and engaged and excited in their work. What does it take for people to get up, to have a job that they get up every day and go, yeah, look, I'm looking forward to this. I'm not waiting for hump day Wednesday and thank God it's Friday and living for the weekends. What are the common elements of jobs where people are actually engaged and interested and excited to do it? And I think like you and I, we've been doing this for a long time, but we're not looking for an escape route or some way out of it. It's awesome that we get to do this. I get to get up early and have a chat with somebody else who's into the same thing as I am. And what Daniel Pink boils it down to is that money sort of taps out at a fairly early point, that once you get a certain level of income, getting more and more and more income doesn't necessarily make your job more exciting. It's almost like you get those golden handcuffs of, just being a slave to the paycheck. And there are a lot of people in high paying jobs in, finance and these sort of glamour areas where they're stressed and they hate it and they don't really feel like they're contributing anything of value to the world. But what the elements that people do need to have something that they're excited to go to is they need a degree of autonomy. So you need to have some ability to make decisions about the way that you do things rather than being told by some big corporate monolith that you have to do things this exact standard operating way. And chiropractic's a phenomenal way to do that because there's a whole range of different techniques. There's a whole lot of different points of focus in practice. And so there's a great deal of autonomy in that in terms of the way that you practice. There's different hours that people can practice. A lot of chiropractors have a lot of that lifestyle freedom. So there's a great deal of autonomy when you're a chiropractor. There's also the mastery piece where most of us love working at something that gives you feedback that you're actually getting better at it, that you're learning new skills. And, people will, like I was talking about surfing, like I'm not a great surfer, but that challenge of can I get better at it is engaging and exciting, and I can't wait to go and do it. But other people, it might be, playing a guitar, or it might be learning. I think you were talking about, how exciting it is to learn new skills around prompts and harnessing the power of AI. Like that's exciting and engaging, and chiropractic has an amazing ability to help you develop skills over time. There's always new research, there's always new techniques, there's new communication approaches. So I'm 33 years into practice and I'm still learning every day. So that's exciting. And the big piece of it is that people are much more engaged and excited if they have a sense of purpose, if they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And for a lot of people, you look at people who are engaged and excited about contributing to the environment, let's save the planet. Chiropractic has a lot of that engagement with purpose, because we're part of a whole lot of different purposes. Where the purpose with this individual person of helping them get their health back on track, or be able to get back on track to be able to look after their kids. But even bigger than that, we're part of a purpose of helping our community kind of re-engage with improving health and improving that. And by improving health, you improve a whole lot of other things in our society. We're less dependent on drugs. We're a more harmonious community. And being part of something like that every single day, while at the same time having a great lifestyle, I think there's not too many things that tick all those boxes in the way that chiropractic does.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And so as we build a parallel narrative here, that was the first stage. People learn what is chiropractic, why people become chiropractors, why is chiropractic important. And now second stage is they start to learn about the skill sets that chiropractors are able to develop within their hands, within their minds, within their hearts, and also just within their business models and their communication skills. I'm wondering if you can unpack all the different types of skills that you've been able to develop after having chosen to become a chiropractor, and how those skills remain skills that you're constantly refining and developing on this path of mastery, not to mastery.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would look at it that chiropractic, we talk about it as being a science, a philosophy, and an art. And there's skills embedded within each of those, which I'll come back to in a minute. And we're also then, by the nature of the way most chiropractic practices work, we're in general in small businesses. And so there's a whole lot of communication skills a whole lot of skills that come in with working with a team, and then the administrative and financial skills of running a small business. And then we're working with people who don't always have the same level of understanding of the nature of health and the potential. So there's a whole lot of interpersonal skills and communication skills that come with that. So if I start perhaps with the science, philosophy, art and work my way through, from a science perspective, a lot of the education is based in understanding science and understanding the application of science. And so I feel like my chiropractic education was great in terms of preparing and developing my critical thinking skills and my ability to read and understand research. And there are people who from their chiropractic education then get extra qualifications and actually go into research. And so you get a really beautiful understanding of that way of seeing the world and that way of interpreting things. So you can look at areas outside of chiropractic and develop an informed perspective on them at a higher level than people without that education. So if you were looking to look at how you should eat or how you should exercise, you can read literature in that regard in a much more critical, informed way. In terms of then practice, there's that interest of you can keep up to date with the literature specific to us and look at the unfolding of that and how you might apply that in your specific style of practice. So whether you're somebody who's primarily working with athletes in a performance model to help them fine-tune their body so that they can perform a little bit better as an athlete, or you're working with little babies and you can apply the same research to work with babies to help their neurodevelopmental development unfold at its potential. There's this application of science, which I think is really interesting. The philosophy part of it, I think, is kind of really unique for chiropractic in that most healthcare professions have a philosophy, but they don't really examine it in the same way that chiropractic does. So there's a really lovely quote, which I'm probably going to butcher a little bit, by a health philosopher called Daniel Dennett, which says, essentially, you have no choice whether you have a philosophy, you just have a choice as to whether you examine it or whether you just assume it as baggage and have the impact of it without examining it. And I think one of the things that can be really cool as a chiropractor is that we put a lot of thought into our philosophy in terms of unpacking with this major premise of there is a universal intelligence. Well, what does that mean? And there is an innate intelligence, which, for the purposes of this, we're sort of looking at the ideas of, well, how we set up to function. How is our body and its relationship to the environment around us, and how can we examine that from a philosophical perspective to better understand how and why we do certain things. And then the art part of it. So chiropractic is, I think healthcare generally is sort of swung to almost this idea of algorithms of people come in with condition X and you ask them 8 questions to put them in bucket Y, and then they're given treatment Z, and it's all very cut and dried. And there's some phenomenal things that come with that sort of almost checkbox healthcare. So, having an anesthetic is way more safe now that they use checkboxes than it was where it was just kind of up to the anaesthetist to crank the gas as high as they thought you needed. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but chiropractic, because we work with this sort of complex system of human bodies that are very individually different and then change over time, and there's a lot of different models that we can use to understand the interaction between the spine and the nervous system and the brain and all these other things. There's an art to that. There's the hands-on motor skill of learning how to palpate and sort of feel what's happening with somebody's spine and nervous system, to then integrate that with other information that you have. And then there's a motor skill, there's an art, there's the hands-on application of the care that also has a nuance where you and I might be using a similar clinical protocol, but we'll have our own art to it based on how our bodies work. So I think there's that part of it, that you develop skills around that as you do it, and as you work with more and more people and you do more and more postgraduate training, you can develop that art over time. And it's almost can become a bit meditative when you're actually in practice, because there's this focus on doing this art with people. So philosophy, science, and art. Then in terms of the business piece of it, you're running a small business. So you need to learn a whole lot of things around profit and loss and balance sheets, and how to structure things to support the practice, support your lifestyle, and those type of skills. Involved in that, most chiropractors are working with other people, whether that's support staff, other chiropractors, other healthcare practitioners. And that can either be a clunky, stressful, dysfunctional relationship, or if you learn the skills of how to create a dynamic and interaction or a synergy between people, that can be, having skills in that area not only helps you in practice, but those sort of skills also translate into the rest of life. Being able to work with other people feels great, and it also helps you get better results and so on. And I guess an area particularly connected to that I have a lot of focus on is on developing communication skills, because each of those interactions, whether it's with clients or practice members, patients in your practice, or with your team, or with people outside in your community where you're looking to grow your influence and impact, depends a lot on your ability to connect and understand what other people value and need and want, and then being able to have the ways of simply and with clarity connecting what you offer to what they want. And that's, I guess, the heart of the communication skills. So I think the cool thing about the way that chiropractic is set up is that you get this really wide palette, this really wide toolbox of skills that are fun to learn and rewarding to use. And they also allow you to live a rich life outside of practice as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. The way we are contextualizing it with the pre-Chiro program is develop your inner states, and states is an acronym for scientist, thinker, artist, teacher, entrepreneur, and student. How do you be a better student? And I would love for your feedback on this. So it came from the word innate, right? Your inner states is kind of a breaking up and expansion of the concept of innate. And in school, so much information consumption takes place that it makes it difficult for self-expression from a ratio standpoint to be close to a 50-50. And it's usually like 80% information consumption, 20% self-expression. And a lot of the time self-expression in those contexts of the classroom are tests and quizzes that the prompts are pre-created for you. You have to respond to them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just interested to get your point of view on the promotion of self-expression specifically for prospective chiropractic students and chiropractic students, because that is a reflection and a representation that they're connected to their inner way of thinking, their inner mindset, their innate. Can you kind of maybe just expand on the importance of self-expression in chiropractic?
So I guess first of all, I love the way the acronym that you're using. I think that's a really great way of maybe condensing kind of some of the points that I was talking about, but also expanding them to a much bigger point of impact. So thanks for that. I really appreciate that. I'm going to take that and use that. In terms of that ratio of taking in versus expression, I 100% can see that there is that sort of imbalance, and that some of that is just by nature of where you're at. You haven't yet had enough input to then necessarily have the output at the same level. I would also agree that there's a huge value just in terms of our, I guess, satisfaction and enjoyment of things, of getting to self-express. And in terms of learning that skill of singing in a way that can resonate and connect with others, that won't necessarily be something that people come to with skills around that. But the earlier that they do start to self-express, even though that might feel uncomfortable early on about chiropractic and their understanding of it, that's the way that they're going to get better at it. That you need that repetition of trying to express what you're understanding about how you've connected things together. You need to do reps of that and get feedback to be able to get better at it. So I would encourage people to do it. In terms of, well, how do you go about doing that? I would encourage people to share their journey. You've got a network of people around you who know you, value you, and will be willing to give you feedback. And I would share with them what your evolving understanding is, and look for, well, how can I express why I'm excited and engaged with this to the people around me? And whether that's people who are on the same journey as you, other pre-chiropractic students or chiropractic students, or the family and friends around you, I'd encourage you to try and express what chiropractic means to you to them.
Yeah, we're going to get there at stage 4, but before we get to stage 4, I would love to get your feedback on stage 3, which is becoming an apprentice. In previous conversations, when I asked how many offices a student should shadow before school, a common number that's being tossed out there is 10 offices. And this is not just a short hello, this is an actual immersion experience, immersive experience. I'm wondering if 2 things. One, you can share a little insight, or maybe a lot of insight, into the experience that people have that you've designed through your clinic. And then also, what if we were equipping a student with a template or a manual, a field manual that they could bring with them to your clinic, what types of questions they should be thinking of, what types of things they should be observing and experiencing directly, both on the front end, patient care, but also on the back end of running a practice?
Okay, so for it to be applicable, and that's a great question, actually. So first of all, I agree that seeing a lot of practices is a really good thing. And when I was a chiropractic student, I was really fortunate. There were a lot of chiropractors that allowed me to come in and look at their practice. And so I saw north of 40 by the time I finished chiropractic college. So I think somewhere between 10 and 40 is probably a good number. In terms of the things that I would encourage people to look for, some of it will depend at what stage you are at, but the key things that I think you want to look at is the decision making behind why. So once you understand the why, the next things of the what and the how are much more sort of, I guess, they follow more linearly. So In terms of the why, I would look at it in terms of coming in and looking at, well, why do you why do you use the tests that you use to decide where and how somebody is adjusted? Why do you use that particular force application in that area? Why do you do things in the order that you do them? In terms then of that communication or expression piece, I would ask them, well, so this is now beyond the why, how do you explain chiropractic to people? How do you, on a day-to-day visit perspective, how do you make chiropractic kind of relevant to them? How do you drip feed that understanding of the value of chiropractic on a visit-to-visit basis? They would be kind of the 4 or 5 things that I would be asking people to ask, and not just ask them from one person and then take that answer. But I think the value in seeing a bunch of different people is twofold. First of all, it allows you to see different data points around achieving the same thing and recognize that you can achieve the same goal with a bunch of different strategies. And so then you can also almost try them on by proxy. You can go and see you in practice, Ben, and see like, well, yeah, I feel like I could, that almost the energy and the way of relating, that suits me. Whereas this other person, I can see that they engage with certain people, but that doesn't feel like something that I would be able to model and emulate, because just it doesn't feel as relatable to me. So that would be I guess where I would be looking at crossing off both sides of that.
Yeah, that's such a good point at the very end there with the cultural connection, seeing yourself in the person and seeing what you can resonate with. And I just want to say thank you so much for that answer. That was really deep. And as we transition, so just as a recap, right? They've gotten a familiarity with chiropractic. They've studied it. They've heard from many chiropractors speak about their stories, why they became chiropractors, the lifestyle of a chiropractor. And then they've gone and actually learned about the skill sets to develop within themselves if they were to become a chiropractor. Maybe they've even begun practicing with a little bit of curation and focus on ways they can develop their abilities. And then they've gone into practices, gained some real world experience and observations, and seen chiropractors demonstrate these skill sets that they just learned about and started to engage and interact with. Now we're providing an opportunity for them to start their own pre-chiro club on their college or high school campus. And I'm just curious, from your vantage point, having started a practice of your own, but also having worked in organizations and developed teams, what you would recommend these students do to create a sustainable club that doesn't just end when they leave and graduate and go to chiropractic school, but also that functions in a way that is reflective of the real world experience of being in practice as a chiropractor, so that they can maybe identify what students need, what students want. They can create campaigns. Maybe they can identify the guidance counselors or the teachers or the administrators on that campus. They could go to the health center faculty and maybe encourage them to consider bringing chiropractors in, or just establishing a strong presence of chiropractic through their pre-chiro club, and really that whole ripple effect taking place on campuses worldwide.
Wow. All right. I like this vision. This is exciting. So I guess it feels to me like, you've got a whole, in terms of the way that you've set that up, there's a whole lot of things there that are already going to create a huge amount of value in terms of connection with existing resources within the environment that you're in. I would look at, in terms of my perspective, if I was looking to do something like that, and the piece that I want to tease out and focus on is that idea of it being sustainable, that it takes a certain amount of energy to get something to happen, but if you can put a little bit of extra thought into it so that it's then likely to be self-generating, and that you're not going to put all the effort in and then as soon as you move on and graduate it falls away. If you can put an extra little bit in there so that you've got that potential for succession, and that then the investment of time, energy and resources that you're putting in then goes over years or decades, then that's much more valuable than having it happen for the couple of years that you're able to directly influence it. And so part of the key thing there, I would say, is while you have a vision of it, your vision is going to be more impactful if you bring people around you who are at different stages of their experience into it and work in that sort of collaborative way of how do we want this to work? And also, how do we see that we can have people who are coming in early on in their experience to be engaged in it, so that there are people always in the organization who are at the I'm almost about to graduate, or I'm almost about to leave this cycle stage, and people at the earlier stage. In terms then of making it interesting and engaging, so it's going to have an impact, that will, I guess, depend specifically on people's interests. But the main thing that I would be seeing that people would be wanting to have is a bit of variety. Like there's having chiropractors come in from being in practice to share their perspective would be one way, or having different members of a pre-chiro club presenting on something that they've been investigating that they've found interesting, but having that rhythm of, all right, we're going to meet once a week, or we're going to meet once every 2 weeks, or whatever that rhythm is, but then layering upon that it doesn't get the same, that there's a variety, so that people are getting that stimulus and excitement of seeing things through a new lens regularly.
Thank you for that. And I believe that if we look at the majority of the schools, their admissions departments are the outreach that is taking place worldwide on behalf of chiropractic. And those outreach teams have lists of chiropractors who have either expressed interest in supporting the initiative of sending more people to chiropractic school. And those are the people that would probably support a pre-chiro club if they were local to that geographic location. I'm wondering now, thank you so much for just following me down this path. Stage 5 is the capstone independent study project for prospective students, pre-chiropractic students. But arguably, these pre-chiropractic students are more seasoned than the majority of chiropractic students in school today. And I can only speak as an instructor at a chiropractic school these days, working with second-year students and recognizing that the goal that I have is for prospective pre-chiropractic students to enter into school with more experience, awareness, and opportunities to self-express than these students have had 2 years almost into a 3-year program. So capstone project, any ideas that you would love to provide as a exploratory prompt to go off in a direction for 3 to 6 months, go really deep with something creative that is maybe at an intersection of different topics that you particularly are really interested in, fascinated in exploring yourself as a chiropractor, but also a researcher and an educator?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I might come up with a different answer, in 2 hours' time, when I've had this question percolate in my mind, because I actually think that's a phenomenal thing. So I guess where my mind is drawn initially is there's a couple of things that are quite unique to chiropractic. So there's a lot of things that healthcare practitioners have in common. So all healthcare practitioners have kind of a shared group of skills and a shared group of perspectives around helping people and those sort of things. But there's a couple of things that I would look at as unique, and I would encourage people to look at those type of areas for their capstone, because it's going to add kind of a unique perspective that you're not going to get anywhere else. And so the areas that I would see in terms of the uniqueness, again, it falls into, there's some unique aspects to the philosophy, there's some unique aspects to the science or the application of the science or application of practice, and then there's the unique type of art. And so I would look at it that in terms of the philosophy part of it, there's that idea of there being an innate intelligence or a universal intelligence. And so looking at a capstone project that looked to understand, well, what does that mean, and how has that evolved over time? So, for instance, those ideas were, I guess, initially laid down by the founder and developer of chiropractic in terms of D.D. Palmer and B.J. Palmer, but there has been a whole stream of chiropractic philosophy that sort of stopped at that point. But then there are more contemporary philosophers who have then looked at those ideas and said, well, how can we contemporize them? So David Koch, for instance, and others who have looked at them through different lenses. I would look at a capstone project around trying to express your perspective coming into chiropractic around the value of that progression, or were there ideas that have been lost along the way. That would be a really interesting, very cerebral way of doing a capstone project. If we shift more into the science piece of the puzzle, there's a lot of healthcare science. I would look at chiropractic as we work with people on kind of three broad levels day to day. So there are people who come to us with pain or a problem that they're hoping that chiropractic can help them with. And we can get into a philosophical discussion about whether we're fixing or treating their problem or not. And, there's some value in understanding that, but it's a fairly sort of low level discussion from my perspective. What's kind of a level above that is that there are people who are coming to see us and hoping for more of a preventative thing. If I have this care, that maybe my body will work better and I'm less likely to have something go wrong, or something that resolved under chiropractic care, I might be less likely to have it come back. And there are some other healthcare professions that share those two areas with us. But what I think is less shared is what I would think of as performance. The idea that because your nervous system runs how your whole body works, and it coordinates how your body works from second to second, how well it heals, how well it develops over time, there's this application of chiropractic that it's about helping your body function at its best both now and over time, so that you can do the things that are important to you better. So whether that's you're able to think more clearly in your role of leading and developing future chiropractors, or you're able to do the leisure activities that give you meaning, or you're more engaged in the family and social connections that you have. That's kind of the unique value of chiropractic. And I think looking at a capstone project around, well, what is the scientific evidence for that, or how can we extrapolate from existing evidence to support that idea, would be a really interesting area to express that. In terms of a capstone project around art, I would be looking at it sort of so there's a whole lot of art that is already sort of captured in various technique manuals and those sort of things. But then you and I both know that there's certain chiropractors who are just, they're artists. They're the chiropractors that chiropractors go and see because they have that next level. And I would be super curious at having a student go and see, look, I'm going to spend not 3 hours with this guy, but this guy is the chiropractor that the other chiropractors see in my community. I'm going to spend 20 hours watching him to see if I can work out what it is that he does that's different and has that next level to apply that art.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And just to kind of finish the progression, we don't have to go deep into this one. This is the 6th stage, which is the admissions process. But stage 6.5 is the transition of identity from pre-Chiro student to Chiro student. I'm curious if you can maybe just package this one, because stage 8.5 is the transition from Chiro student to chiropractor. And I'm just curious if you could really just speak to the importance from a mindset standpoint, but also from what's going on inside of how you vibrate differently as a chiropractor versus as a chiropractic student versus as a pre-Chiro student, and how we can really connect all three of those so that there is congruence and there's not any incongruence being patterned into the behaviors of prospective or current students, so that they have to unlearn and relearn and sort of rework the way that they've developed themselves as chiropractic students and prospective students.
Wow, that's a super interesting question. So if I work backwards from what I think your sort of point of focus should be, I feel like there's a whole lot of different points of focus that you can have. I feel like the one that allows you to serve people at the highest level is to sort of come into practice, to come into looking at your role, first of all, and how can I help people? So having that perspective around, I've got this unique perspective around health and the way the body works that chiropractic has. How can I, with that unique perspective, help this person? Now, the reason that I think that that's an important point of focus, because that will sound a little bit almost redundant at a certain level, is because we're working as chiropractors with this unique perspective. But we're working with people who are maybe coming from a culture that doesn't understand health and healing in the same way. There will often be people coming in wanting things from you that aren't really your unique chiropractic perspective. And I think you help less people if you go very general. And so if I can give a very specific example, people will often think of chiropractors as being a way of helping sore joints and so on. And so if somebody comes into you and you're early in practice and you're not super busy yet, and they have sprained their ankle and they say, look, I just need somebody to show me how to tape my ankle. And if you kind of go, but that's not very a unique chiropractic skill. If you go, well, I'm not that busy, I can help this person by doing that. I sort of feel like you're taking yourself down a path that's then very difficult to get out. And there's that incongruity piece of the puzzle. Whereas I would look at it and say, well, you need to then navigate. Well, they're probably better off getting that service that they need from somebody else, and you explaining what you do as a chiropractor. That's a better use of your time and interaction with that person. So then if we look back a step from that, what should your point of focus be when you're a chiropractic student? There's certain points of focus that you need to have to be able to graduate and get through. But I would say that the point of specific focus needs to be on those things that are uniquely chiropractic. So there's a whole lot of different subjects that you need to do, ranging from chiropractic philosophy through to doing cellular biochemistry. And I would argue that focusing on or using the chiropractic subjects as a way of understanding the subjects that don't have specifically chiropractic in their name is a really useful mindset to have, because you can learn the Krebs cycle as, all right, I've just got to memorize the Krebs cycle so that I understand how ATP is generated within the cell, or you can learn it as a way of, wow, isn't this a phenomenal expression of innate intelligence, that there's this pattern and behavior of that, and they're kind of the same in one level, but they're completely not the same at another level. So then if we go to, well, how does that translate in terms of a pre-chiropractic point of focus, I would say it's the same thing. You're looking for, how does this chiropractic view of the world, how can I see that pattern in the things that I'm learning now? So it might not be learning a Krebs cycle, but it might be learning about cellular division. And again, you can learn that as a very mechanical, this happens, this splits, but then looking that layer past that of, well, wow, isn't that a phenomenal expression of it, there being an innate intelligence? That to me is the mindset that I would be encouraging people to have.
Yeah, so fascinating. And I really love the way you just described like the pre-chiro congruence to chiro student and chiropractor, and the potential in that to think of a pre-chiro student as potentially being a 45-year-old who's transitioning careers and looking for purpose, or a 8-year-old who has been told over and over, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they have been to the chiropractor at 8 years old and have a reverence for it. And I'm just curious, from your vantage point, have you ever had a conversation in all your years of chiropractic that focused so much on pre-chiropractic and the potential there? I mean, we talk about the primary subluxation happening pre-conception, maybe conception, the birth process, but we don't ever sort of apply that to the profession and think through who are those sperm cells and those egg cells represented as in the real world. There are kids, our elementary school, middle school, high school. You know, in 1908, I read once upon a time that nobody brushed or flossed their teeth until Timmy the Tooth was disseminated, and they hired a marketing company, the Profession of Dentistry, to create the word plaque. And plaque was promoted by Timmy the Tooth as something we needed to fight against. And he went to all the elementary schools. And here we are now. I have a 2.5-year-old son, and when we go to the library, there's 25 books on dentistry and nothing on chiropractic. And now with AI, you can create a kid's book in about 15 minutes. And it's just insane how fast you could write kids' books. So anyway, just putting it out there. I'm a one-person think tank when it comes to this chiropractic thing. We could talk for hours, but I just wanted to really just say thank you so much for the genuine conversation this morning. It was really excellent to hear from you, and I hope that we can use this conversation to help build value in the eyes of prospective students in Scotland, Australia, and anywhere else that they hear this message and feel called.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your work in focusing on this area. I 100% agree that if we're wanting things to thrive, that wanting the profession to thrive, and by extension the community to thrive, that having this point of focus of maximizing both the number of people who can connect with chiropractic as a potential career, but also the value of their experience and the depth of their experience and understanding on the way through, that the work you're doing here is just, yeah, phenomenal. Thank you.